I never believed in looking back at old videos. Some memories are better left in the past, especially in the Matthews family. But when our son Tommy found that dusty box of home videos in the basement while looking for his Halloween costume, I couldn't say no to his excited face. "Mom, look, it's Dad when he was young." Tommy's voice echoed through the basement as he held up a tape labeled James's 16th birthday, 2008. My heart skipped a beat. That date marked more than just my husband's birthday. It was the day his sister Emma vanished without a trace. I almost told Tommy to put it back, but James had been different lately, more withdrawn, especially after his parents' recent passing. Maybe watching Happy Memories would help. How wrong I was. "Sure, honey. Let's see if the old VCR still works." I helped him set up the ancient machine in our living room, dust dancing in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. The video started normally enough. Teenage James, lanky and awkward, blowing out candles on a chocolate cake. His parents singing, his sister Emma making funny faces behind him. Beautiful Emma, only 14 then, with her signature red hair clips that would later be found by the lake, the only clue to her disappearance. That's when the first glitch happened. The screen flickered, static cutting through the happy scene. Tommy groaned, "Mom, it's broken." "It's just old, sweetie. These tapes, sometimes." I stopped mid-sentence. When the picture cleared, something felt off. The party scene resumed, but the timestamp in the corner was jumping erratically between 3:15 p.m. and 3:33 p.m. Tommy, with his child's curiosity, kept rewinding and playing that section. "Look, Mom, it keeps doing the weird thing." I was about to stop him when he managed to pause it perfectly between glitches. The image froze, and my blood ran cold. There, in the background, barely visible through the kitchen doorway, stood a figure. Not one of the party guests. This person was dressed in dark clothing, partially hidden behind the doorframe. They were holding something. A photograph. "Tommy, go get ready for dinner," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "But Mom." "Now please." Once he left, I moved closer to the TV, my hands shaking as I tried to make out the details. The photograph in the figure's hands, it showed Emma, but not Emma from the party. It was Emma from the day she disappeared, wearing the same blue dress she was last seen in. That was impossible. This video was from hours before she went missing. I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling as I took pictures of the frozen frame. James needed to see this. But as I stepped back, something else caught my eye. On the kitchen counter, barely visible in the frame, was a newspaper. The date shown wasn't from 2008, it was tomorrow's date. My phone slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor. The sound must have triggered something in the old VCR because the tape suddenly started playing again, fast-forwarding on its own. Through the static and jumping images, I caught glimpses. Emma walking out the back door, the dark figure moving through different frames, and James, young James, looking directly at the camera with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear? Guilt? The tape abruptly stopped, ejecting itself with a mechanical screech. The TV screen went black, but not before displaying one final frame. A message typed across the screen in green text. 15 years is long enough. Time to tell the truth. I heard James's car pulling into the driveway. How would I tell him what I found? He'd spent years in therapy dealing with the guilt of his sister's disappearance. The last person to see her alive, though he'd always claimed he couldn't remember anything from that evening after the party. The front door opened and James called out, "I'm home." "Something smells good." I quickly pushed the tape back into its box, my mind racing. But before I could hide it, Tommy came bounding down the stairs. Dad, we found your old birthday video. But there's something weird in it." Mom got scared. James appeared in the living room doorway, his expression changing as he saw the VCR and the familiar box. "Where did you find that?" "In the basement." Mom showed Dad the scary part. James's face had gone pale. "Sarah, why did you?" He stopped mid-sentence as his phone rang. The caller ID made his hands shake. Unknown KLER. "Don't," I whispered, but he was already answering. "Hello." Through the speaker, we could hear only static, then a young girl's voice singing "Happy Birthday," Emma's voice. James dropped the phone like it had burned him. Tommy, oblivious to the tension, picked up the phone. "Hello." His face scrunched up in confusion. Mom, the lady says to check the lake tomorrow. She says Uncle Mark knows where. James stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe for support. Mark? My best friend Mark? But he moved away right after. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. Mark, James's childhood best friend, had mysteriously moved across the country immediately after Emma's disappearance. Mark, who'd sent a bizarre email last week asking if James still had his old birthday videos. The phone in Tommy's hand crackled again. This time, a different voice came through, distorted, but clear enough. Ask James about the boathouse. Ask him what really happened after the camera stopped rolling. James's legs gave out, and he slid down the wall to the floor, his face buried in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. I remember, he whispered. Oh God, I remember everything. The lights in our house flickered, and the VCR suddenly whirred to life again, even though the tape was back in its box. On a TV screen, static cleared to show the lake behind the Matthews' old house. The timestamp read 3:33 p.m., but the date showed tomorrow. James, I said carefully, moving Tommy behind me. What happened in the boathouse? Before he could answer, his phone chimed with a text. It was from Mark's number, but the message made my skin crawl. Time's up, James. Either you tell them, or I will. Meet me at the lake tomorrow at 3:33. Bring the tape. Emma wants to come home. The drive to my in-laws' old lake house the next day felt like a journey through a nightmare. I'd sent Tommy to stay with my sister, despite his protests. James hadn't spoken a word since last night, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The lake house stood exactly as it had 15 years ago, a Victorian monster of peeling paint and weathered wood. The only difference was the yellow police tape wrapped around the boathouse, put there just this morning after I'd made an anonymous call about Emma. You didn't have to come, James finally said, his voice hoarse. After what I saw on that tape, try and stop me. I clutched my purse, feeling the weight of the video inside. Mark's car is already here. A black SUV was parked haphazardly near the boathouse, its driver's door still open. As we approached, I could hear music playing from its speakers, the same happy birthday song from last night's phone call. James, Mark's voice cut through the autumn air. He stood at the boathouse entrance, looking nothing like the teenage boy from the birthday video. His face was gaunt, haunted. You brought it. James nodded, pulling the tape from my purse. Why now, Mark? After all these years? Because of this. Mark held up his phone, showing us a photo that made my heart stop. It was Emma, but not teenage Emma. This was a woman in her late 20s, standing in front of yesterday's newspaper. She's alive, James, and she's done hiding. That's impossible, I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. The woman had Emma's distinctive birthmark under her left eye, and the same slight smile. Tell her, James, Mark's voice cracked. Tell your wife what happened that day. Why Emma ran. Why we helped her disappear. James sank onto a nearby log, the tape trembling in his hands. Dad wasn't who everyone thought he was. The perfect businessman, the community leader. They didn't see what he did behind closed doors. The bruises. I remembered Emma's school photos, always wearing long sleeves, even in summer. But why didn't you tell anyone? We tried. Emma tried, but Dad was too powerful, had too many friends in the department. James's voice turned bitter. That birthday, Emma finally got proof. She set up a camera in her room, caught him in the act. It's all on this tape, after the party footage. Mark stepped forward. We had a plan. Stage her disappearance. Get her somewhere safe. But something went wrong. Dad caught me copying the tape, James continued, tears streaming now. He came at me with. I thought he was going to kill me. Emma jumped between us. There was a struggle. She pushed him hard. He fell, hit his head on the boathouse dock. We thought he was dead. Mark's hands were shaking as he lit a cigarette. Emma was hysterical. I got her out of there, sent her to my aunt in Canada, but when we came back later, Dad was gone, James finished, just blood on the dock. He must have stumbled back to the house, told everyone Emma had run away, created this whole story about troubled teens and family shame. And we were too scared to say anything else. A twig snapped behind us. We all turned to see a woman emerging from the trees. Her red hair was shorter now, but those eyes. I'd seen them in dozens of missing person posters. "Hello, big brother." Emma's voice was exactly like the recording, just older, tired. "You got my messages." James stumbled forward, but Emma held up her hand to stop him. "Not yet. First, we need to finish this. Dad's dead now, but his lies are still living. Still hurting people." "The police tape," I realized. "You called them too?" She nodded. "They're reopening the case. The original detective retired, but the new one, she actually listens, and she's very interested in what's under those floorboards." "What?" James turned sharply toward the boathouse. "Dad didn't make it back to the house that day." Emma's eyes were cold. "Mark and I saw him trying, stumbling, bleeding. But he collapsed right there." She pointed to the boathouse entrance. "We were going to call for help, but then we saw the tape in his hand. He'd taken it from your room, and we just waited. Watched him die." Mark dropped his cigarette, crushing it under his boot. "We buried him under the floorboards. Figure he'd be found eventually." But then James's mom convinced everyone Emma had run away, that she'd been troubled, violent. The police barely looked. "And you let me believe, for 15 years. James's voice was strangled. "Every birthday, watching Mom waste away from grief. You were safer not knowing." Emma stepped closer. "We all were. But now Mom's gone too." And that detective found something in Dad's old files. Turns out Emma Matthews wasn't his first victim. There were others, going back decades. Girls who ran away, who had accidents. A siren wailed in the distance. Emma smiled grimly. "Right on time. The detective is bringing a forensics team. They'll find him, James. And with this tape, my testimony, and the evidence in his files, the truth finally comes out." "But you'll go to jail," James protested. "Both of you." "Maybe," Mark shrugged. "Or maybe the jury will understand why two terrified teenagers did what they did to survive. Either way, it's over. No more hiding." The sirens were getting closer. Emma finally stepped forward, wrapping her arms around her brother. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I left you alone with this." James broke down, clutching his sister as 15 years of guilt and grief poured out. I watched them, finally understanding why our son's room had always been painted blue, Emma's favorite color. Why James never celebrated his birthday. Why he'd wake up screaming about the boathouse. Police cars crested the hill, lights flashing. As officers approached, Emma pulled away from James and squared her shoulders. "Ready?" she asked Mark. He took her hand and nodded. They turned toward the approaching officers, hands raised. The detective who'd reopened the case, a sharp-eyed woman named Martinez, stepped forward. "Emma Matthews, Mark Collins, you have quite a story to tell us." I gripped James's arm as they were led away, watching his sister glance back one last time. The tape in his hands felt heavier than ever, weighted with 15 years of secrets finally coming to light. "Detective," James called out, "you'll need this too." He held out the tape, his hand steady for the first time since we'd found it. As the forensics team began prying up the boathouse floorboards, I realized this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of the truth. 3 months later, I sat in the courtroom, watching Emma and Mark's sentencing. The trial had been front-page news for weeks. The missing girl who wasn't missing. The respected businessman who was actually a monster. The decades of abuse and cover-ups finally exposed. James squeezed my hand as Judge Harrison cleared her throat. The courtroom fell silent. In light of the overwhelming evidence of long-term abuse, the testimony of multiple victims who have since come forward, and the exceptional circumstances surrounding Mr. Matthews' death, this court cannot in good conscience impose a lengthy sentence. Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly. She looked different now, stronger, more present. Weekly therapy and the support of domestic violence survivors who had testified on her behalf had helped bring back the girl from the birthday video. "Emma Matthews and Mark Collins, please rise," Judge Harrison continued. "This court sentences you to 5 years, with all but 1 year suspended. The remaining time will be served through community service, working with organizations that help victims of domestic abuse." A murmur ran through the courtroom. It was more lenient than anyone had expected, but then this case had changed how people viewed justice. Detective Martinez's investigation had uncovered 7 other victims of James's father, spanning 3 decades. The man buried under the boathouse had been a predator hiding behind wealth and respectability. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as Emma hugged James. 1 year, she whispered. I can handle that. And then you come home, James finished. Tommy can't wait to meet his aunt. The mention of our son made Emma smile. The birthday boy himself. I saw the party photos you sent. He looks just like you at that age. I thought about Tommy's 7th birthday last week. We'd finally watched the full tape, not the horror hidden in its second half, but the pure part, the celebration. Tommy had been fascinated by his teenage dad, by the aunt he'd never known he had. Speaking of birthdays, Mark approached, his ankle monitor blinking. They had 2 weeks before reporting to serve their time. I found something you might want. He handed James a small box. Inside was a red hair clip, Emma's signature accessory from all those years ago. Found it in my aunt's attic in Canada, Emma explained. Thought maybe it's time to make new birthday memories, better ones. James stared at the clip, then at his sister. No more hiding? No more secrets? No more, she promised. Detective Martinez is making sure of that. They're reopening every case Dad ever touched at his law firm. Every troubled teen who vanished, every domestic violence case he helped bury. His legacy is finally crumbling. I watched my husband's face as decades of pain began to lift. He'd spent 15 years thinking he failed to protect his sister, when in reality, they protected each other the only way they could. Mom would have understood, James said quietly, if she'd known the truth. She did, Mark cut in. At the end, that's why she sent me that email last month, the one that made me finally come forward. She found Dad's hidden files while cleaning out the house. She died knowing the truth, James, and she was proud of you both. The revelation hit James hard. He carried so much guilt about their mother's decline, her endless grief over Emma's disappearance. Knowing she discovered the truth before passing brought visible relief to his face. Tommy's voice cut through the moment. Dad, Aunt Emma. He ran up from where my sister had been watching him, launching himself at his long-lost aunt. Emma caught him, tears streaming. Hey, birthday boy. Want to hear a secret? Your dad was just as huggy at your age. Really? Tommy looked skeptical. But Dad hates hugs. Not anymore. James scooped up our son, pulling Emma and me into a group embrace. Even Mark joined in, awkward but smiling. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, James and I sat watching home videos, new ones, happy ones. Emma and Tommy baking cookies, Mark teaching our son magic tricks. Simple moments that had seemed impossible just months ago. I found this. James handed me an old photo album. Mom's last project. Look at the last page. There, carefully preserved, was a note in his mother's handwriting. To my beautiful children, I understand now. Everything. The truth set you both free, and it set me free too. Emma, my brave girl, and James, my protective son. You did what you had to do. Love isn't always gentle, but it's always love. Be happy. Be free. All my love. Mom. The doorbell rang, Emma and Mark coming for their nightly dinner. It had become a routine in these last precious days before they began serving their sentence. Tomorrow, they'd meet with their assigned domestic violence organization to plan their community service program. You know what's funny? James said as we headed to answer the door. All those years, I thought that birthday was the worst day of my life. But now I realize it was the day we all started becoming free. I thought about the birthday video that started it all, still sitting in evidence storage. One day, we'd tell Tommy the whole story. But for now, we had new videos to make, new memories to create. Emma and Mark stood at the door, carrying takeout and board games. Behind them, the sun was setting on another day of truth, of healing, of family rebuilt from the ashes of secrets. Happy Thursday, Emma grinned, using their new tradition of celebrating every ordinary day as if it were special, because now finally it was.